Look, y'all, opening weekend has come and gone. And I understand as we talk about all these games and as we talk about the outlook for this season, the reasonable thing to say is, hey, it's just one, two games. Don't overreact. Don't overreact. And you know what? Generally speaking, you might be right. But I'm about to react because what I've seen from the two Washington Mystics rookies, Kiki Arifin and Sonia Citron, two friends in no cap space, I might add, has me not ready to overreact for this year, but for the next decade. Because I absolutely adore what I have been seeing from these two players in their first two games. I literally feel like that one SpongeBob episode where Squidward's hitting the future. Because, oh my goodness. Like, you want to talk about being able to be ready from the jump? This Washington team has obviously put these two rookies into positions where they have to be. They have to be ready. And especially in that Connecticut Sun game, game two, right? Both of them played really well against Atlanta in the first game as well. But as I stand, again, this is just, I'm recording this on the same day as the Valkyries game, but before the Valkyries game. So, we'll see what happens. And look, as I sit here, I understand, and I'm not placing the expectation of perfection on either of these two. There's going to be games where they struggle. There's going to be halves where they struggle, so on and so forth. But from what I've seen in these two games, and obviously Connecticut is not some superpower in the WNBA this season, but I have just been so incredibly impressed with the readiness. So I wanted to come in here and talk about both of them individually. Let's start with Kiki Arifin, because, again, had a solid double-digit scoring that first game, but 17 points and 14 rebounds in this game against Connecticut. And there was a couple things that really stood out to me during that. And the big part of it was the way that she is playing with confidence. I think collectively, not this wasn't just an I, but obviously I don't think that the tenure at USC went the way that it was supposed to go for anybody, right? For Kiki, for viewers, for the coaching staff. Like, it never felt comfortable. Right? It never felt comfortable really for anybody. And figuring out where Kiki was going to produce in that system, which was obviously heavily dominated by Juju Watkins. And hey, I get it, right? But still, a system dominated by Juju Watkins. And Kiki, to me, that light that we've interviewed her twice, there is a light that comes off of Kiki. Like, that is just the type of person that she is. And there were certainly flashes of that light over the course of a season, but ultimately, and I'm not gonna pretend I know her super well, but like, to me, I didn't feel like that light was often there. And I was worried about if that light would come back in the W, the confidence, the game that she has. This was a player that I know Olivia Miles made the waves because she was eventually made her way up to the number 2 pick. Kiki was that player for a long time going into this draft, and obviously Dominique Malonga came into the conversation as well, and there was dialogue across the board. But Kiki, going into this college season, was there for a reason, and obviously the season doesn't go as anticipated, right, at USC, just in terms of, I think, the comfortability and the way that the fit was. But in this game right here, she showed you exactly why. Exactly why she's a lottery pick. Exactly why she's a potential franchise player. Exactly why she's a potential future All-Star, future All-WNBA. That there are the possibility of all those things. All of it happened in this game against the Connecticut Sun. Again, 17 points, 14 rebounds against Tina Charles, right? And look, Tina Charles got hers, right? 23 points, 8 of 15. I thought Kiki's defense was really, really good. And I thought Tina Charles was playing like Tina Charles, right? I mean, look, one of the most underrated legends that the game has ever seen, and I might talk about that more a different time because that's really been bothering me, actually. But what we saw from Kiki in this game, the defense was absolutely there. And look, the mid-range, we know what Kiki is known. Like, that is Kiki's bread and butter, right? We know the one leg sleeve. I'm not saying she was Asia Wilson. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that she is Asia Wilson. I'm not saying that she's going to be Asia Wilson. But goodness gracious, that midi, with the one leg sleeve looked eerily familiar. And she's obviously talked about her inspiration coming from Asia on many times before. This is no secret by any means. But goodness, the way that she was able to face up, the way that she was able to get to the rim, ripping through and taking the dribble and getting up for a layup, the post moves. I mean, just across the board and doing it efficiently, right? 7 to 10 from the field. I just absolutely adored the game that Kiki had. And when you think about the aspect of baby Asia, right? Like that is, I think that's always kind of been like the easy comp to make, and it's for good reason, right? Her game is so similar in that way. There was a lot of signs of that. And I don't care who you play in the WNBA. You're not accidentally getting 17 and 14. I don't care, right? And so to see that, I was incredibly impressed by her, and I love seeing this confidence back, and I love seeing the dominance back that we've seen before. I mean, it just never felt like there was moments at USC we never felt like it got rolling. It never felt like there was that true comfortability, right? And to see that so early on into her career, again, just 2 games, but every sign and every reason why Kiki was as heralded as she was coming out of college and in the lead up to her final season, right? All of it came through in this game against Connecticut, and I was so incredibly impressed. Now, to the other rookie, Sonia Citron. Look, if you've followed along with No Cap Space, especially since like January 1st of this year when the offseason started, you may have heard me mention Sonia a couple times.
I'll tell you right now, if you take that number 3 pick and you go and draft Sonia.
I hate like talking like this. I sound so cocky, but
no, you don't. First off, no, Sonia, you don't, because you did it. Like you are this caliber of player. You just saw what Sonia Citron just did. Who can be the best 3-and-D player in the WNBA?
Look, I think Sonia can change the trajectory of the WNBA. And what I mean by that is not viewership. It's not any of that, which is, I feel like normally when you talk about trajectory of the WNBA, we're talking about that stuff. I'm talking purely on the court. Because think about it, right? Think about it. All of these teams want 3-point shooters. I mean, look across the board. The Mercury, the Sparks, the Dream, the Valkyries. We're seeing this influx of the emphasis on 3-point shooting. And there's not a ton of 3-point shooting like snipers out there, right? There's not a ton. And Sonia is not like the greatest 3-point shooter of all time. I'm not saying that. Walk with me, okay? What I think we're going to see is these players, she's around like 37%, I think, last season in college. If she is able to keep that line, and especially if she's raised it to the 40 mark, which is like the benchmark of a truly great 3-point shooter to me, right? The idea of 3-and-D is not something that has been incredibly common as an archetype in the WNBA, right? To me, when I'm thinking of like the long term of the WNBA, especially as we continue to see this influx, because if you look at last year's like regular season, like 3-point made list, right? For just on average. If you look at the top 10, top 15, really more so the top 10, right? Not a ton of great defenders. Once you get into like 10 through 20, you're starting to see some better defenders across that list, right? And to me, if Sonia gets into this range, right, where if you're a top 15 3-point made per game, right, and if you're shooting it at a high clip, because again, we have last year in the regular season, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 players that make it over the 40% mark. Better defenders across those, but we might not be talking about the same volume, right? And if she's able to strike that balance of shooting a good percentage, of making and shooting a high volume of threes, right? To me, the way that she plays defense can make her the archetype when we're talking 5 years from now. We're looking at draft comps and we're talking about who here is the next Sonia Citron. That's where I see her at. And again, being at least in this new age, right, this new generation, who is like the archetype of 3-and-D, to me, Sonia has the capability to be that player. And everything that we saw in these games, again, it's more of a just 3-point shooting. Because 3-point shooting, again, she's not like some incredibly knockdown every 3 shooter. Like there's room for improvement there still. But it's the other stuff too, where it's like, maybe I'm shelling her short. just calling her 3-and-D. Like that's where I have kind of grown into, because that second half against Connecticut, she really struggled in that first half, right? That second half against Connecticut was absolutely phenomenal. When she ends the game, Brittany Sykes is like, yeah, I just finished what you started. And Brittany's like, what rookie says that? That's what I'm talking about when I'm saying game ready. And I felt Sonia was very undersold when it comes to being game ready in the WNBA. When we talk about skills translating, Sonia looks like she's bilingual in college in W. Translating, not an issue. Not an issue. And I am so incredibly excited to see what continues to grow, because the off-ball movement has been there. Again, the defense is the defense. Like, we know what you're getting on the defensive end. I think the way that she continues to run, watching her chase around Marina Mabry, like, doing that better than a whole lot of players in the WNBA already. And when I'm looking at this Washington Mystics future, I think the obvious thing, critique for both of them really, is the fouling, and I think that that'll get under control over time. But goodness, I'm not saying anything about what the Mystics are going to do this season, right? That's not what I'm getting at here. But the idea of this rebuild, which I was terrified by when they're like, well, we'll do what the Wizards are doing. I'm like, no, please don't. Please don't. Please don't. But what we've seen early on this season is a jumpstart to a rebuild in 1 year that doesn't include a number one pick. And that doesn't happen very often in the WNBA, right? Like you might have this like transformational star. Kiki and Sonia weren't deemed as that. And I think it's very interesting that you're now able to pair them together. Obviously, we'll see like how this season ends and what comes next, and drafting and trading and yada yada yada. But I could not be more impressed from these first two games. About players that, look, if they keep this up, and Paige had a phenomenal second game. I thought she was solid in the first game. I thought she was really good in that second game against Seattle. We might have a Rookie of the Year race on our hands. We might. I'm not gonna say anything crazy on that, but we might. Something to monitor. But I just had to get on here and talk, because I've been so incredibly impressed by these two friends of No Cap Space. If you go back, Kiki was the very first No Cap Space interview. So, am I biased? Maybe. Sue me. Sue me. I'm so sorry to you. But I've been so incredibly impressed by these two players. So I had to get on here and talk about it. But make sure you're tapped in across the board with No Cap Space. All of our podcasts and print content, all on NoCapSpaceWBB.com. And of course, here on the YouTube. Over 50% of our viewers are not subscribed here on the YouTube. So if you think you're subscribed, make sure you're subscribed. If you're not subscribed, click that big red button. Let me know what you thought about these rookies so far for the Mystics. And do you think that there's a possibility for the Rookie of the Year race? Stay tapped in, and I'll see you next time.